Hello, my name is Jamie Scannell. I'm a cognitive behavioural psychotherapist working for Goldsmiths Counselling Service. I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about grounding. So this is going to be hopefully quite a quick, useful introduction to the world of grounding techniques. So welcome. Now, our aim's really straightforward. I wanted to talk through a couple of things today. First of all, we'll establish what grounding is, so hopefully we can understand it a bit better and why it might be useful as a tool to deal with difficult emotions. Secondly, I wanted to just go through some really basic examples of tried and tested grounding strategies. So the hope for this is hopefully you can go away and feel more confident utilizing these strategies when you feel emotionally disrupted. So what do we mean by grounding? So grounding is a therapeutic coping strategy. It does what it says on the tin in that it's designed to ground you and connect you with the present moment, utilizing our five senses. This is done in order to hopefully cope. It's used within the treatment of a number of difficulties. So obviously it's there for dealing with overwhelming experiences and feelings, inclusive of things like anxiety, stress, dissociative experiences, trauma, flashbacks, as well as things like self-harming urges. Now, grounding techniques can be used when we feel distress, particularly when this distress makes us feel detached or disconnected, or we may experience something known as unreality. So, example being, with painful, uncomfortable emotion like anxiety, we can feel this kind of dissociative sort of experience. Grounding can help to bring us back to the here and now, utilizing an awareness of our own bodies. I'd also like to add that it's quite important actually that you practice these when you're feeling nice and calm. So we don't want to be relying on an unfamiliar strategy at a time of intense emotions, say with a panic attack. Try these strategies when you're feeling good so you know what they actually feel like, what the experience is like. Now, the techniques I wanted to share today are ones I've used in my clinical practice, but also ones I've tried myself and would certainly recommend. The first example is the 5-4-3-2-1 technique. This might be familiar to some of you. It's kind of done the rounds on things like social media, which is great. It shows it's out there and people are kind of aware of it. So it's where we connect very deliberately with our five senses. Now, if I can ask you to indulge me slightly and go along with this with me right now, engage with your senses. So what I want you to do is have a look at your surroundings, whatever room you're in, and name 5 things you can see. This can be items of furniture, maybe there's people around you, maybe you're just looking at the sky or trees, anything you can see. Name them. This can be aloud, can be in your own head. Now I'd like you to name 4 things you can feel or touch, and then go ahead and touch them. So perhaps this is the chair you're sat on, the desk you're leaning on, maybe you have a certain texture to your clothing. Be tactile, sensory. What does that feel like? Experience these things. Now name 3 things you can hear right now. So tune into that frequency. It could be the sound of your keys tapping on your laptop. There might be an electric hum coming from somewhere. Maybe if you tune into outside, maybe the birds are chirping, the tick of a clock. Now on to our sense of smell. This one can be a bit more challenging, but name 2 things you can smell. Perhaps there's some freshly brewed coffee in the house. Or you might be wearing your favourite perfume, or perhaps you put some aftershave on this morning. Maybe give your clothes a sniff. Maybe there's fabric softener that you can kind of really tune in on, some sort of aroma. What's that like? Finally, name 1 thing you can taste, and as you probably guessed, go ahead and taste it. So maybe chewing gum, or maybe you've got something you can eat, put in your mouth there, or maybe you've got a cup of tea with you, or some water that you can take a sip of. Because essentially when we truly engage with our senses, we can't help but be present and in that moment. Now, what I wanted to move on to was our second technique here, which is progressive muscle relaxation. So when confronted with stressful situations, our bodies respond automatically, as they're supposed to. This is true when we have stressful or negative thoughts also. And this relationship between our body and mind is reciprocal. So what we mean by this is that if we find a way to relax the body, we can soothe and relax our sometimes active minds, With progressive muscle relaxation, the plan is to attend to each muscle group in turn. We first tense the muscle and notice what it feels like before releasing that tension. We can then observe the difference between what it feels like to be tense and the contrast with relaxation. Now, a quick disclaimer, obviously if you have any injuries or if any part of this tensing release cycle is uncomfortable, then this might not be the correct strategy for you right now. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but the idea is that you find somewhere that's going to be nice and comfortable, somewhere to sit or lie down, somewhere you won't be disturbed, hopefully. You might allow your eyes to close if that feels comfortable, and focus your attention on different parts of your body in sequence. So there's several ways you can do this, but as I've already mentioned, the tense and release method is probably the ones I'd recommend. So this is where you tense a part of your body. So let's say you make a fist, you ball a fist up, and you hold it really, really tight and tense for a few moments, but then you release. So you clench, hold, release. And just notice the difference between when the tension is there and when there's the more relaxed notion. Now, here's a recommended sequence. This is from a website called Psychology Tools. This is a really great way to do it. I would recommend maybe even pausing this video now and giving it a go, seeing how it feels, see if your body feels any differently, and see if there were parts of your body that were holding tension you didn't even realize. Now, what works for one person may not always work for another. And if the more kind of physical, sensory-based techniques aren't for you, then perhaps a cognitive awareness, grounding exercise is more your cup of tea. So when feeling emotionally heightened or distressed, maybe consider reorientating yourself in place and time. So you can do this by asking yourself a series of questions. So you could ask, where am I geographically? I guess you could think philosophically. That might not be overly helpful. What day is it today? What's the date? What month is it? What is the year? How old am I? What's my age? What season is it? Is it cold outside? Is it warm? Is it spring-like? Is it autumnal? So this can be particularly useful, and I know it probably sounds really basic, but particularly useful if we're experiencing intrusive memories from challenging past experiences or perhaps trauma-based memories, because it can essentially help us differentiate from the then and there to get us back to the here and now. It can be a reminder that you are safe right now, even if you weren't in your past circumstance. But perhaps that's a conversation for another video. Now, finally, our last strategy is this idea of grounding objects. So another simple way of grounding yourself when you're feeling disrupted or dissociated is through this use of objects. So they often have a particular sensory characteristic that's maybe pleasing or focusing, maybe very soothing for you as an individual. It can be something with a specific texture, or maybe it's got a coolness or warmth to it, perhaps. Maybe it's got a weight, or it's weighted in a particularly interesting way, or because it's hard or maybe even soft. The colors might just be pleasing to the eye or have a calming quality, as this kind of green kind of locket shows. It may have a special meaning to you for whatever reason, or it could have a spiritual or religious significance, or perhaps it was just given to you by someone you care about. And it can just be something as simple as this tangle toy, which is used for fidgeting if you want to do something with your hands. Or maybe it's just easy and convenient for you to carry around. The idea of this is it helps you focus. I've worked with people where the object was a journal. That's where I got this idea for the book up in the top left. Particularly pleasing textured cover. Could be a commitment ring or a wedding ring, or it could be just something you really treasure. At times, actually, I've worked with people where it's something they've crafted themselves, so they have a special connection with it. It's really up to you. Whatever works for you, be as creative as you like. Now, that's it for today. Hopefully nice and quick. Hopefully you've learned something from this. Hopefully there's something you plan to use. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Practice makes perfect. Go out there and try some of these strategies. Do your own research. See what works best for you. Stay safe and take care.